something. We just can't figure out what it was to deal with it.
Good morning. Welcome to the August 25th Tulare County Board of Supervisors meeting. If you would please stand with me as we salute the flag and remain standing for a moment of silence. Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. We are going to deviate slightly from our calendar this morning. We want to take a very short minute or two to go to closed session to hold a vote that we did not hold last week but should have. So we're going to adjourn to closed session, and we'll be back in no more than 2 minutes, so don't go anywhere.
Sure to bring a business card for you today. I always forget myself, so I finally remembered today.
I said don't go anywhere. I'm going to turn a couple of minutes over to Gene Russo to announce out of our closed session.
On a motion made in closed session by Supervisor Vanderpool and seconded by Supervisor Worthley, the board voted to appoint Jake Raper as the Resource Management Agency Director. Jake has worked with Jake is here with his wife Vita. He's worked with for the county since October of 2008. Since that time, he's been very innovative and thinking outside the box and trying to help the agency move in the right direction. I personally have enjoyed working with Jake and look forward to working with him over the next couple of years and perhaps longer. So without further ado,
Wait a minute.
Jake Raper.
2 years? What's going on? Are you leaving?
No.
I think he was referring to me. I just want to take this opportunity to really express how appreciative I am of this opportunity. This is a pinnacle of my career, and I just want to say I will do my very, very best to not to let the board down, try to create a vision and operational sense of RMA in the near future. I know the board and all the staff want some positive changes to occur. We want to have a positive image within the community. We want to have a good reputation of client services and customer service within our county. And so, I truly look forward to trying out new systems and new programs and really trying to motivate staff to go beyond what they normally have done in the past. With that said, I would like to thank a number of people, and I would like to certainly express my thanks to the board for the opportunity, Mr. Russo and Ms. Bennett, for all their encouragement and assistance over the last 8 to 9 months. What I can say is that throughout my career as a public servant is that I've had very good mentors over the years. They've given me opportunities to stretch my ability and to try to accomplish things that I would never think as a childhood that I would achieve. Growing up in Oklahoma as basically a very poor family to this today. I mean, this is, to me, it's just fantastic. The other people, certainly I wanted to thank my wife, Vita. We've been married about 5 years, and my life has been nothing but an upward spiral since I've met her. And she has brought me tremendous luck and brought a lot of happiness in my life. And so she is here today to support me. She is very bashful, so she probably won't say much, but she may. But I would like to, again, just thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for this opportunity. And we'll certainly work to accomplish what your goals are and what our goals are too. Thank you very much.
Slight clarification here, an explanation. We did this morning because so as not to violate the Brown Act or have any resemblance of violating the Brown Act. We didn't have this listed correctly last week in the agenda to announce, or did we announce out So we just wanted to clean this up this morning and congratulate Mr. Raper. We're going to go down the row here and see if folks have something nice to say about you. Supervisor Sheila.
I think Jake comes into the agency at a very opportune time. We have experienced a tremendous amount of turnover of our senior staff, and so we have a lot of younger people in these management positions. And I think that the opportunity is that we've always done business a certain way. Maybe it's time to change the way we do business, and maybe the new attitudes of our new management will change directions and become more consumer-friendly and more efficient. So I really think it's a great opportunity to have Jake in this position at this time, because mentorship is extremely important to RMA because of the staff turnover. So I look forward to seeing, I have high expectations, Jake. Thank you.
Supervisor Worthley.
Jake, congratulations to you, and I'm just sorry that Mr. Ennis is not here, because a fellow Oklahoman would, I told Mike, I says, you won. But we've interviewed 3 candidates, very able candidates last week, and I'm happy to say it was a unanimous decision by the board to support you. And I would have to say that is because the board has observed you in these last months that you've worked for the county, and I see you as an extreme problem solver, and that's a gift. Not everybody can do that, but you can look at very difficult situations and find a way to find a resolution to solve a problem, and I think that gift will serve you well in your capacity in this position. And very happy to have you on board, and want to thank you for coming to Tulare County. I know you left another part of the state to come down here and still having a home up there. It's a difficult time in the real estate market, but glad you're here, glad your wife is supportive of you, because we know that's very critical to your mission and your success as well, and again, congratulations to you.
Supervisor Vanderpool.
Jake, just want to congratulate you. This is a wonderful achievement, and just know that the board did make its decision to select you because we do see your abilities to deliver services and deliver customer service to the people of Tulare County that utilize your office. And so at any office, resource management agency or otherwise, customer service should be the #1 priority because that's what we're in the business of, and you certainly recognize that, and I look forward to working with you and trying to make that possible for every resident that you come in contact with. So thank you very much, and congratulations. We look forward to working with you.
Well, I'm not going to heap any more accolades on you because your head's already starting to swell. Do look forward to working with you, Jake. You have been a bright star out there since you've been here, and we do look for great things from you. So congratulations, and we are going to take a 1-minute break for folks to, again, 1-minute break for those folks to congratulate Jake and his wife on his new job, and then we will reconvene in 1 minute.
Stand up, sit down.
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate your help. Yeah. Steve, thank you very much. Gene.
Sounds like you need to meet my wife.
I am. Congratulations. It's always good to look forward to working with you.
Well, whoever steps up, and I'm going to tell them,
They were sitting on my chair.
that's fine, I'm going to tell them they can speak during the, they're not going to speak now.
My telephone. I better turn my telephone.
Cobwebs.
Cobwebs from where? From where?
The pool thing. I couldn't, you know what I ended up doing? I had to order that thing online.
Oh, no.
I ordered the whole kit. They don't, I think I can get through that brass thing.
Nobody makes anything threaded with brass anymore.
Chair, if I may just say one more thing, if I
Just
may.
one, just one more.
Just one more, and I won't take too much time. You know, I just want to say thank you to Kristen. She's been an excellent person to work with, and I truly look forward to working for her and with her in the future to accomplish some of the goals. I found her to be, during the master courses in organizational communication, there was one author, Robert Greenleaf, who put out a small pamphlet called Servant Leader. And servant leaders are people who basically encourage people, give them guidance and direction, then just sort of steps back and let them make the choices that they want to make. And Kristen is truly a servant leader in that respect, in my view. And she has done an excellent job for RMA. I know she's earned the respect of every assistant director within RMA with her short time there. So we do appreciate her and the things she's done and the encouragement that she has provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake, you got one more word. I'm going to get one more as well. I'm trying to lose weight, so don't bring any more cookies. Okay, we're going to continue to our calendar now. We have a public comment period. I do have 3 requests to speak in regards to item 26. I'll have you speak at that time, and we'll be there shortly. So if there was anyone wishing to address the board on an item that is under its preview but not on today's agenda, please step forward and state your name for the record. And again, the 3 that did turn in, if there's someone here to speak to item 26, we'll have you do so at that time. Okay, seeing none, we will move to Board of Supervisor matters. Supervisor Vanderpool.
I don't have anything for this morning. Thank you.
Supervisor Worthley.
I'll probably just keep my comments when we talk about the Williamson Act until then.
Sheeta.
Last week, as a member of the TCAG Rail Committee, we went up and met with the San Joaquin Valley Air Resources Board, and it was a very positive meeting, and I believe we found a partner in our quest for preserving the rail, because it's 10 times more efficient to move freight by rail versus by truck. And before I went there, I looked at a report from Rail X, which is a facility in Delano, and they specialize in produce. And they guarantee produce to the East Coast in 5 days by rail. So Rail X now is shipping 110 cars a week of fresh produce to the East Coast. What that equates to is 440 trucks that are no longer going cross country. And it also represents over 2.5 million truck miles off the road because of this new service that Rail X is providing. And I believe that not only the Air Quality Board understands the value of rail, but we are having open comments right now from the state of California wanting to get input on the impact of freight rail. So it was a very positive meeting.
Thank you. I have nothing else this morning, although I do want to mention that Supervisor Worthley does have a commitment 10 o'clock, family commitment, and I think wherever we're at in the agenda, he's been excused at that time to leave. So don't be offended if he stands up and walks out. Okay, we will, at this time, it's not a timed item, but we do have an item listed on our addendum for 9 o'clock, a presentation given by Lauren Brandt, Managing Director, and Jamie Whitaker, Senior Managing Consultant of PFM Asset Management. Good morning. We look forward to this every year. Let's hope they're still looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. I'm Lauren Brandt. This is Jamie Whitaker, and thank you very much for having us with you today. Needless to say, the markets have continued to be very volatile since we last spoke with you in August of 2008. The county should be commended on its financial acumen and ability to move forward through these challenging and difficult markets. Global economists have described the markets over the past 2 years as tumultuous and unprecedented. And despite this roller coaster ride, the county's Millennium Fund program has performed very well. First and foremost, the assets have been protected against any of the credit issues that have befell other public agencies. The county's Millennium Fund portfolio never held Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, or Washington Mutual holdings that which suffered significant losses in the market. Also, the performance of the Millennium Fund, which is measured by the difference between the borrowing rate on the bonds and the investment rate on the bonds, has held pretty steady, especially given certain the current market conditions as well. The cushion that we built up in the early years has certainly helped to buffer the impacts of an inverted yield curve back in 2006 and 2007, and of course the market volatility, the frozen markets that we've experienced here over the last 18 to 24 months. So we've been very pleased about that. Looking here on page 1, just a very brief background, and then I'll let Jamie get into some of the details about the performance of the fund and where we are moving forward. In 1999, as you'll recall, the county issued $45 million of taxable short-term notes. This is very different from the normal course of the county's bond issuances, which are typically tax-exempt given your governmental status. The program structure was designed that way from a short-term borrowing rate perspective because the long-term goal was to generate $179 million over the course of the next 35 years. So we have the ability to buy longer-term investments which have a higher yield than the short-term borrowing rate. So that has been the goal of the program in terms of performance and generating the ability to get to that $179 million. And in 2006, the county had the foresight, along with PFM, to refund those bonds. This is prior to the credit markets going haywire, so to speak, to refund those bonds and do a private placement with DEPFA Bank. Now, this has proven an extraordinary and beneficial situation for the county, as it eliminated a lot of the short-term variable rate costs on the bonds, and in addition to that, over the last 24 months has actually given the county access to markets which had in essence been frozen. Going forward, again, our goals are to generate an investment rate that's higher than the borrowing rate on the bonds. That helps to grow the fund, and as well as to use the strategy that we have in place along with the bond documents and the abilities that we have to keep those assets safe and growing for the course of the objectives for the fund over the next 20 years or so. And I'll turn it over to Jamie for some of the specifics.
Thank you. So some of the savings that the county's realizing from doing the refunding in December 2006, number one is the debt service payments. The debt service payment each month is set to the 1-month LIBOR rate on the first business day of the month plus 25 basis points. And 1-month LIBOR is about 0.28% right now. Compare this to a rate that the state of Ohio is paying on their tobacco bonds. This is from March 2009, 10.56%. Or the Golden Gate Tobacco Securitization Corporation, 9.64%. So massive savings, a huge savings for the county on the interest rate being paid on these Millennium Fund bonds. And letter of credit, prior to the refunding, there was a letter of credit facility needed. Letters of credit are almost impossible to find now. And if you are able to get a letter of credit, the cost just for the letter of credit per year is about 1.2 to 1.5%. And also, there's been a lot of disruption in the bond insurer market for municipal securities, and these the Millennium Fund bonds did not need insurance. They're privately placed with just one holder. So there's a lot of cost savings for this program because of that 2006 refunding. Now, the picture on April 1st, as far as balance goes, is $46 million. But at that period, at that point in time, there was still a lot of uncertainty in the market, and market values have since improved quite a bit, and that's why I added last week's market values of, now it's worth close to $50 million. The unwind exposure, or in other words, what would be left if the county decided to collapse and close the program, is approximately $9.5 million that is left over. Now, this program does provide annual appropriations. $2.5 million was the limit up until the December 2006 refunding, but that limit was expanded. The maximum was expanded to $3.5 million with the refunding. In mid-July, the county took $2.5 million for capital projects, and the total to date is $26.7 million. So since 1999, the county has been able to use $26.7 million for projects. Now, the performance as of April 1st, the difference between the borrowing rate and the total return on the investment is negative, or was negative, and again, that reflects the market value volatility at that point in time. That has since improved. And this is a chart of 1 month LIBOR, just to give you an idea of the volatility. In normal times, 1 month LIBOR pretty much follows the Fed funds target rate. And you can see last year around this time, the month of September last year was unprecedented in many ways. And that's when there's a huge variance between 1 month LIBOR and the Fed funds target rate. But since that time, investors' confidence has improved, and we're back to just a 2 basis point difference between Fed funds and the 1 month LIBOR rate. The program depends on a positive sloped yield curve. In other words, being able to get a higher interest rate from longer term investments than what the program is paying out for its bonds for the short term. And at this point in time, the yield curve is positively sloped. However, yields are very low. And that's good for the program overall, but the growth of the program is being held back a little bit just because of where rates are today.
And we're likely to see that continue. I mean, I think everybody has heard that the Federal Reserve, with the overnight Fed funds rate at 0 to 0.25%, so near 0%, is likely to hold that rate through to 2010, through the calendar year 2010. So that exposure there will help to keep the borrowing rate down. With the steepness in the yield curve, our confidence level that we can attain an investment rate higher than that short-term borrowing rate is pretty high, especially now when we consider with 0.5% on the borrowing rate and about 1.5% on the investment rate with some of those longer term purchases that we've made in recent months on the intermediate term side, that we'll recoup some of that negative spread and start adding on the cushion that we had before that. So I think that just provides some context that when we're here next year that we're likely to see perhaps a continued steepening in the yield curve, which again will be beneficial for the county.
Now, the current investments in the portfolio are mostly set to mature in 1 to 2 years, which is a good thing, and that rates right now are very low, so we really don't want the funds to reinvest at this point in time if we can avoid it. So 2010, 2011 is when the majority of the funds currently invested will mature. And they're diversified among sectors, federal agency, securities, FDIC guaranteed corporate notes, which are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, along with floating rate corporate notes. And the floating rate corporate notes, the purpose of those is that they're tied to 3-month LIBOR, which is typically a higher yielding rate than 1-month LIBOR, what is that service is pegged to. So that helps us ride the volatility if rates were to turn up sharply in the next few months, these variable rate corporate notes, the coupon rates would be following them almost in lockstep to go up.
And that's why you see such a significant portion, 60%, because when they started issuing these floating rate notes, which have been very scarce in prior years, again, designed as a hedge against rising future interest rates. And again, a protection, built-in protection, as that 3-month LIBOR rate rises, the 1-month LIBOR rate tied to the bonds, they will, again, provide that built-in cushion going forward. As we anticipate rates rising, we just don't know when. The crystal ball's a bit broken right now.
Indeed. These are the individual issuers, very familiar names. These are companies that are large and diversified among their business sectors. And
Still around.
in some cases, the U.S. government has made it pretty clear that they're not going to let them fail. I guess Citigroup probably jumps out as one of those, and Bank of America as well. The U.S. government has certainly asserted and put money out there to make sure those companies have a life.
And I'll say that PFM has a very strong internal credit committee, which helped us to avoid a lot of the issues, like I said, that befell other investment advisors and other public entities. So we have very staunch, stringent credit requirements. So we continue to monitor each of these corporate notes, and if there is a red flag, we will be in communication with the county about the position that we're going to take on that, and discuss your views as well. But we've been very comfortable with how the government has interacted, and also, as Jamie said, asserted themselves with these companies. So we feel at this point very comfortable holding each of these corporate notes.
And it's also reflected in the market value improvements since the April 1st reporting date. The market values of those bonds have improved back to what's quote-unquote normal. The investment strategy for the Millennium Program is to take advantage of the positively sloped yield curve, but not go out too far, because there is the interest rate risk, the possibility that interest rates could turn around and head and surge upwards. So we are keeping the portfolio relatively short, with about a year and a half duration. Within the portfolio, again, about 50 to 60% of the portfolio is pegged to LIBOR, 3-month LIBOR. So when interest rates do turn around, that will help hedge against that increase in interest rates. The program has in the indenture, when the program hits a balance of $60 million, there's the $3.5 million maximum optional appropriation that the county can take, but if the balance is above $60 million, after you account for the $3.5 million appropriation, the county is able to take that amount, the difference between $60 million and the balance after the $3.5 million appropriation. And we project if the county takes $2.5 million annual draws, as it did this year, the $60 million balance will be reached approximately December 2012. Again, that's sort of assuming that all else stays the same, and so that's sort of the caveat.
And that caveat is the spread between the investment rate and the borrowing rate will stay the same from here through projected for the next 20 to 25 years. So not necessarily that rates will stay the same, but that that the investment spread, right, the performance spread will stay the same.
Right. If the county were to draw $3.5 million per year, the growth of the endowment, the growth of the fund would be a lot slower, and the balance of $60 million wouldn't be reached, we project, until October 2025. Now, the biggest factor on the growth of the fund outside of interest rates and draws from the program is the tobacco settlement amounts. And tobacco sales have been declining, and they have become more taxed than they were in the past. For example, the federal excise tax went up to $1 per pack this past March, and state taxes on per pack range from 7 cents in South Carolina, a major producer of tobacco, to $2.75 in New York. And California is actually considering raising the tax right now. So there is the forecasts that were made in 1999 for tobacco settlement amounts is certainly subject to change. if tobacco sales are not within a range of what was expected at that point in time. But we are maintaining an unwind value that's $9 million as of last week, above what the outstanding bonds are, and certainly we'll keep Mr. Rousseau and others in the administrative office informed of what's going on.
So even despite the lower expected or actual tax tobacco payments that we've received, we've been able to manage the funds appropriately so that we can still generate positive returns. Any questions?
When you were talking about the assumptions going forward, you're showing a decline of 3+% on tobacco sales reduction annually. Is that part of your projections? In other words, are you assuming continued decline in tobacco sales? But as I understand it, that doesn't necessarily trigger a change in the amount of money that's paid to us. If it falls below a certain point, then it has an impact on the payment obligation. But it's not like every time there's a drop of 3%, there's a reduction of 3% from payable to the county. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the State Attorney General's office, they recalculate the estimated payments every 1 to 2 years. So I believe our estimates are based upon the 2008 estimate.
And does that remain constant for us, or has it dropped?
I
Those
believe
payments?
the amount has maybe dropped slightly, but just
Even
not-
despite that, we're still ahead of all the original
Projections.
1999 projections. Right.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you. I know it's a long way to come for this report, but it's something we look forward to every year, and I think has proven to be a very profitable program for the county. So I think Supervisor Worthy, were you even here when we?
I was here when we started this process, and I was going to say, just in parting, that I appreciate the fact when we brought this back in 2007 to make these changes, which have been so beneficial to us, that I appreciate the three newer members. Pete was not here yet, but the rest of the members, it was a new concept to them, and they quickly learned what we were dealing with and supported the change, and very happy we made those changes. I know it's had a dramatic effect on the bottom line for the fund. And also, I was going to say, when you look at other investments around, I'm sure you wish that the retirement board could say that they hadn't lost any money either over the course of the last few years.
We're on the way back up, though.
Right. So it really, truly is a good story, good news story, and I know the county took a lot of criticism at the time when it was done. People were afraid we'd put it in the stock market, we were going to lose it all, and I think now we've been at this for a number of years, and it's demonstrated that it's a sustainable program. It's been very effective. We've been able to take money out of it, used for special projects and maintenance that we need on our facilities. And I'm very grateful that I didn't have the concept originally. I think I just came on the board when this was passed. But the concept was really a good one. It's really served the county, I think, well. So thanks very much. And also, Mr. Rousseau may not say anything, but he said to us he was very appreciative when we were looking at the big companies. I made my snide comment, in fact, they're still around, because a lot of those big companies are no longer here, but it was your active management and your keeping on top of the situation ahead of the marketplace that made sure we weren't invested in some of those things when the bottom fell out. And so I know Mr. Rousseau has pointed out you certainly have earned your salaries, if you will, your fees, because it saved us the potential for losing a lot of money, which a lot of other counties and municipalities did suffer losses. So thanks.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your continued confidence in us, and we look forward to seeing you next year.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now take up our consent calendar. Any items need to be pulled, board? Any member of the public wish to desire to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
Second. By Vanderpool, second by Sheeta. Pass. Okay, next we'll take up addendum item number 2. A request from our auditor, controller, and 6 other titles. Consider our property taxes for this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Board members, Mr. Rousseau and Ms. Beltlang, I'm happy to be here today. I'm Rita Woodard. I am the auditor controller here today. My office is at 221 South Mooney Boulevard, room 101E. This is a time fixed by law for levying the tax rates for the state and county purposes for 2009-10. We recommend that the board approve the rate of taxation of the state of California for the fiscal year to be collected upon the taxable property of the county of Tulare, state of California, at the rate of $1 per hundred of assessed valuation, as shown on the schedules given to you this morning, as allowed by law. We apologize for the updating of it. When the assessor gets an extension, he gets an extension, but we do not necessarily get one. So instead of 6 weeks to do this work, staff had less than 3. So to get it on your schedule and get it out there accurately was quite a task. We could extend, but that would hold up the extension of the tax roll and title transactions out there. We don't want to do that to the public. So I'd appreciate this work that staff has done. And in the audience today is Hailey Wallace, my chief deputy, and Charla Allison, who is the chief accountant over this division, and her staff back in the office is listening, and they are very hard workers, and we appreciate them very much. So there are some adjustments on the schedule. On page 7, there were some typos on the Tulare County, the Tulare Healthcare Bond 2005A. It should be .01483, and the Tulare County Pest Control B should be 5.00 for both this year and last year. On Schedule D, we now have the rates for Fresno and Kern County. They are proposed rates. They are meeting today also, and we are expecting them to pass those rates today, or they would not have given them to us. Of course, there is always public input, and they could change a little bit. But Schedule D is for informational purposes so that you can compare in certain areas where they are. We further recommend the board order the tax rates as shown on these schedules A, B, and C be levied and directed to be collected upon each $100 valuation of the taxable property of the several school districts and special districts of said county for raising the necessary amount to pay principal and interest on the bonds for some special purposes of said districts as allowed by law. We further recommend the board approve and accept the statement of valuation of the property of this county as compiled by the county auditor and filed with this board. We do have an equalized roll this year as of August 20th with some changes from what the assessor turned over previously. And the equalized roll still has a negative roll, but is now 0.8957% instead of 0.966% negative. A little bit different. Last year's current tax rolls totaled $332 million plus. We expect this year to be a little more because there are new bonds out there for school districts that were sold. Schedule A now includes a new tax rate for qualified public utility established with Senate Bill 1317. The California Constitution requires the State Board of Equalization to assess this property. Other than franchises of companies transmitting or selling gas or electricity. Senate Bill 1317 established a single countywide tax rate area within each county to allocate these values, which makes a little bit more work for us along the way. So we recommend that you approve these rates today to pay all these bonds. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Sure, just a comment. Before Prop 13, this would have been probably a timed item at the end of at the beginning of the meeting. Would have involved a lot of public comment and so forth. This is normally actually an item that we have on the consent calendar anymore because, other than, as you say, the changes that come about because of bond sales through school districts and special districts and so forth, it is fixed by law at $1 per hundred, and under Prop 13, that's what it is. And so I just wanted to point out this is not something that everybody needs to get excited about. There's no change here. This is just standard operating for the county since Prop 13. And the only increase in the property tax has come about because of bond sales and so forth that have been approved by the voters. So
We do recommend that it not be on the consent calendar, though, in case people do want to speak up on the school bonds. Protect
they need to
UNS.
speak at the time they vote. But anyway, I
They have.
move approval.
Moved by Worthley, second by Ishida. Thank you, Rita,
Thank you,
very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you and thank you to your staff for having crammed everything into a short time period. We appreciate that. Okay, we're now going to move to our other untimed items. We're going to take items 25 and 26. Our staff is asked to present both items together, but we will take separate actions on these items. So, Mr. Davis is going to present items 25 and 26 together.
Good morning, Supervisors. We asked to look at both of these agenda items because, as you well know, we can be giving away $20 million with one hand and have another $2.5 million taken away in the other, and that's all about categorical funding. But your constituents may not actually see what the background is for this, so if you'll give me a few minutes, we'll walk through some of these changes that are happening to us. And I guess that the subtext here is really that the state government has one agenda it's running, and the federal government, of course, with the stimulus money, has an entirely different agenda. So we're working with both and trying to make sure that as we get cut, we use what funds we have to margin our difficulties. In Tulare Works, as you recall, last year we had a Governor Blue Pencil then too. He took away about $3 million, and we were well into the year. And what we ended up having to do was to eliminate about 147 positions. That was not a very pleasant experience, and we knew that we had to at least start gearing up even then for what was coming. The staff in our human services, David Crawford and Jason Britt, spent the rest of the grant year, it seemed, tooling down our services sector for Tulare Works and making sure that employment services and some of our support services were reduced. In child care in particular, we brought it down, or they brought it down, to about $3 million in annualized savings to get us, in a sense, a cushion or transition us to the current year. This year, as you're well aware, we had a $7.5 million hit. That, again, in the governor's blue pencil. And much of that we know will be going into daycare, and if he doesn't sweep savings first, we probably anticipated really well, and they did a great job in getting us ready. The difficulty we're having is we don't know how the cuts are going to come. We don't know what our proportion will be. This is an estimate based on our allocation relative to the rest of the counties last year. The cuts may actually be tied to our growth monies or what's expected to have happened in the new year with these fundings. So we really won't know what's happening until about October, mid-October, maybe even late October. We're in the same position where we're mounting debt, in essence, and waiting to see what the size of this hit will be. If it's on growth, it probably won't be disastrous or even difficult in some respects. We're already making all those strides. There is a way, however, and the staff, again, David Crawford and Jason Britt, have come up with a way to kind of hedge our bets. And that is, let's use our stimulus money, which is for subsidized employment. We'll have this money is about $1.4 billion available to the state of California. The contracts you have in front of you are asking to claim about $20 million of that. And we'll take that money and use that with our contractors. They're very much behind this. We've been in negotiations with them for 6 months. So we'll just substitute the stimulus money for what was Tulare Works money and bring that dollars back and sit and wait. Sit and wait and see what happens. So in a sense, this agenda item in front of you, we've worked out with our contractors, CSET, Proteus, Tulare County Office of Education, and they're turning on a dime. And they're doing that, A, because they're seeing our dilemma and what difficulty we're in. B, it would be really nice to get this money out into the community. If in fact it arrives and we can get it out there and get as many people employed as possible for the short term, remembering that this ends September 30th of next year, then we have a year's worth of experience we've given our clients. We have as much of the $20 million we can get into the community as possible, and we've given ourselves a few months breather here while we wait. And that's essentially the story behind grants of $20 million. When right behind it you have a second agenda item, which is addressing child welfare services. Again, it was the governor's blue pencil. Again, we're estimating that it's about $1.8 million. There's a couple difficulties even in that estimate, because we lobbied for and got additional state dollars several years ago, and those state dollars can be used to leverage federal dollars. So if the funding formula comes down and hits us disproportionately, it'll be larger than 1.8. So we feel some urgency even now to act on what the problem is in front of us. We think it's a conservative estimate. And there's always that history, that long, long history with the state where the Central Valley, in any change in the funding formula, gets hurt. We never seem to get our proportionate share. So you have before you a second agenda item that deals with child welfare services. You know that last year we lost $1.5 million. We lost 66 positions. That was largely a response to the realignment drops. This one is in the actual allocation that the governor blueprinted. We're looking, as I say, at about $1.8 million. I would rewind a little bit and say for about 2 years we've been thinking about restructuring child welfare services before this dilemma even hit us. And we wanted to look at a whole bunch of things, primarily quality control, having a policy development group, best practices. The group has already kind of moved in that direction, to some degree. Confronted with this cut, we're actually looking at having to look at whole new ways to do business. And the recommendations that came from our consultant a year and a half ago after a study was made of CWS are pertinent. We didn't implement them immediately because we had a new deputy director and we wanted time to settle in and see how the program was working and let that person who has enormous experience look and see what was needed or what we could use out of that report. Renee Smiley, our deputy director, is back here as well, sitting in the audience. I think we had a lot of the pieces. She's, I think, improved substantially on what we were thinking about doing, and what it comes out to be is pretty much this. We have a lot less money. We have a lot less resources. We need to get our job done, and to do it, we'll change our business. We'll eliminate certain specializations in CWS division, court representatives, our adoptions workers, and we'll make a generic kind of social worker 3, that can follow work or work can follow them wherever the work develops, ebbs and wanes. We want to encourage the development of those generalists. We want to maximize our social work functions. What will happen in this process is some of our caseworker aides and clerical support will not be with us in the workforce reduction. And that creates a need for some of these social workers to, for example, be involved with home visitations. In a way, that's not a bad thing. And there's other work that should be distributed or redistributed. So we're looking at doing those kinds of changes. We also, and I think this was a good innovation brought to us by our new deputy director, we also need to have a lead worker position right behind our team leaders so that when they're gone, someone can step up, providing some guidance in the short-term absence of our team leaders. So we need the flexibility. We wanted to strengthen supervision. Did that. I think in the agenda item, I know in the agenda item you have before you, we're adjusting the division manager's salary by about $6,000. This actually corrects an organizational problem we've had or problem we developed ourselves years ago when we set this up. We actually have a division manager who's making less than our CWS managers. This corrects that. It eliminates one of our CWS managers. It puts another CWS manager under her supervision, and it allows us now to formally set up our quality control piece, our quality assurance, our best practices. We're going to move a couple of the other units that are out there, like screening and then the liaison with the courts. That'll all be in the quality improvement section of the unit. I'm hopeful that your board will act on both these resolutions and that we can get moving. I'm worried that the cuts are there. We need to make some savings, and as we delay each month, it's about $200,000 in CWS, for example, and that's money we need to make up, and at the same time, we need to meet our clients' needs. I'd be happy to entertain any questions your board has.
Questions? One of the things I'd asked for, John, was as we count through these, there's like 55 or so positions, 55, 59 positions, but the actual numbers of people that will be affected are a lot lower. Is that not correct?
That is true. It's about 20 or maybe even as low as 17. When they start moving through the agency and we're trying to find people places, oftentimes when you're bumped, you get, well, many times, you get choices. Those choices dictate how the line bumping goes. We also had more savings last year than we anticipated, and less people going out the door because we actually had some people who found other positions or didn't want to make the transition or the change. So some of that might happen. It actually might be less than 17.
Great, thank you. What I'd like to do, do have a request to speak to item number 26, but I want to take item 25 up first, that being the agreements with our 3 local partners. Any questions, board?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Worthily,
I'll second that.
second by Vanderpool. Okay, we do have, thank you. I didn't see it. It was unanimous. You turned it off pretty awful quick there.
Efficient.
Okay, next is item 26, the reorganization as well as some staff reductions. I do have a request here from the public to speak to this item. This is not a public hearing, but I want to allow public comment on this. So we'll have a 3-minute clock if we can. And then I have a request from Kermit, and I have a German here, so I'm going to say Volschläger, Linda Shockley, and Joseph Jackson. So in no particular order, you can choose your own order if you'd like to come up and speak to this item. Yeah. Morning.
Morning.
Your name and address for the record, please.
That'd be 2621 West Iris, Visalia. Chairman Cox, I would like to request if I could have an extra minute or two.
You're burning time. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Okay. I'd like to begin. I'd like you all to see this. This says an agency's greatness is measured by the way it treats all of its members. I'd like everybody to see that. I think that's really important. And thank you, Chairman Cox and board members, for allowing me to speak a few minutes. Our CWS management, many of them are here today, kept secret its plans to reorganize. We asked our unit managers, our supervision. We knew something was in the works, but we didn't find out till last Thursday. Here we are, lo and behold, 3 days later, and you're being asked to vote on this agenda item, and we hardly think that's fair. We have no choice but to bring our case straight to the Board of Supervisors. Here we are, and as Director Davis stated, we're going to lose so many thousands of dollars a month unless we make a decision quickly on this agenda item. I'd like to, each of you have a packet in your hand, and I'd like to take you back in history a little bit to this agenda item that was presented to a board back in 1997 to reorganize the county. If you'll see, do you gentlemen have that packet in front of you? If you'll see on the front page, and this came from, let me see whose name is on the top. It says Ron Probosco, Agency Director, Assistant Agency Director, John Davis. It says on the top, delete. The bottom part of the page, number 2, delete 74 Social Service Practitioner 2 positions. Well, interestingly enough, there were only about 12 of us at the time that were Social Service Practitioner 2s, so I'm not sure how that got in there. In addition to that, in this proposal, it said that CWS team leaders should be licensed clinical social workers. The county was only able to hire 2. One of them made a terrible decision in an investigation which resulted in a lawsuit towards Tulare County, and the county was sued for several $100,000. Us social work staff wrote letters to the board at that time that were largely ignored. What this county did at the time was they lowered their qualifications to high school diploma plus experience. And then they came back to the board and said, we filled all those positions. That's very disingenuous. They promoted support social workers to get the same pay as master's level adoption workers. When they were unable to hire master's level social workers, they went ahead and filled the positions with undergraduates or less than an under.
What year are you talking about now?
1997.
We're still in 12 years ago.
That's
Okay.
right. I'll bring it up.
Can you bring it up to today,
I
please?
certainly will, sir. Thank you so much. Now, in this recent agenda item, this county administration is proposing layoffs to several other people. And they've also recommended, interestingly enough, that adoption workers be reclassified as a CWS Social Worker 3. Well, I just have to back up, if you don't mind, just for a second, that after Probosco Davis took over the county, created the super agency, CWS unit managers were granted a 10% raise immediately. And following the next 5-6 years, they were given 10% raises 2 more times, plus all the COLAs. Adoption workers in 2002 went to our unit manager, Lilia Sandoval, and said, you know, we noticed these salary raises and we feel like we're being left behind. Lilia Sandoval was told by the county, tell your workers to go to their union and take this up. So, just briefly, here's the document we put together to document that our salaries, when we looked at adjacent counties, were less than all of the adjacent counties.
Is this the 1996 document I have in front of me?
2002, and I'll
Okay.
bring you up to date. So now, as part of their reorganization item, they're asking that master's level adoption workers be reclassified and take a 10% cut. I will tell you that after 3 years, Jim Brinkerhoff and Tim Woodward finally agreed, and I'm sure John Davis had a part in that decision to upgrade our salaries. So here we are down the road a couple of years, and who's asked to make a sacrifice? We were more than willing, when there was a 2% cut and furloughs for everybody, sharing the pain. We would have even been willing to share in the pain if some of our administrative staff would have been willing to take a 5 or 10% cut along with us. But I do want to present you with a question. What if we went to our medical doctors that work for the county and said, we can no longer pay you for your advanced degree, we can only pay you what a nurse practitioner makes? Or if we went to our attorneys and said, we're going to pay you what a paralegal makes? That's essentially what you've done for master's level adoption workers. I apologize, my mouth is dry, but I will conclude my remarks. It's clear to me, and hopefully should be clear to this board of supervisors in this community, that there is a serious problem. I did include in your packets a salary schedule from 1989 and 1996, and Tim Huntley could provide you a current one. And if you look in there, you will start to see that whenever there's a reorganization, it's the people on the bottom that are being reorganized. There's a little nip and tuck there at the top, but we have so many folks in this county that are making 6-digit salaries. And as you were presented before, they need to upgrade. This manager here complains, and this is what I hear, that this other manager is making a little more than them, and so they bring it back to the board, and their salaries go up and up and up. And I just ask that this board at some time would stand up to the agency director and this county and demand more accountability. The proposal to cut $2 million from the budget is not fair, it's not reasonable. It's only contributed to reducing staff at the bottom. Once again, Tulare County workers will face higher caseloads, fewer staff, and administrative salaries, and staff will continue to grow at record numbers.
Okay, can you wrap it up, please?
I sure will. I would ask that the board would take some additional time to consider their proposals and allow time to study their request, and surely wait a few days and ask for some outside opinions and perspectives to help shape this process. I pray that one day Tulare County and the Board of Supervisors will have the courage to stand up to Health and Human Service Agency and demand more accountability. Thank you for your time.
And next I have either a Linda Shockley or Joseph Jackson. Good morning. If you would, your name and address for the record.
Okay, I'm Linda Shockley. I live at 2520 South Redwood Drive here in Visalia. And I'm here this morning to speak on item 26 also. I'm here because workers less than a month ago willingly voted to give up their merit and increases in their pay to save Tulare County money in these distressed times. We were assured by Mr. Huntley and Mr. Rousseau that management and everyone would share in the pain. We're now facing layoffs in CWS and layoffs of people who serve the community, who provide the services to the community. This will leave the remaining workers even more worked and more stressed. Doing so at a time of financial crisis for each of them, whether they're losing their jobs or one of the ones that are remaining and increasing the size of their caseload. It's ironic to us that their division manager in CWS is even being considered for being compensated for taking on additional duties. So we ask you, what compensation are you planning for the workers left behind who are going to be taking on responsibility of higher caseloads? Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph Jackson? Good morning. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Joseph Jackson, and I reside at 1592 Nelson Boulevard, Selma, California, and I'm an adoption social worker. I've been with the agency since October of 1985, so I've been there almost 23 years. And I came in with the expectation that my master's degree would be worth something. Now I'm told I'm going to be reclassified as a CWS Social Worker 3, and another reduction in salary of another 10%. The agency wonders why people does not stay with the agency. Well, this is why. The agency was talking about we need a $2 million reduction because of what Arnold did to the budget. And I think the pain needs to be shared all the way from the top of the administration down to the bottom. The agency was talking about where we're losing out of the approximately 21 caseworker aides. All of these people are bilingual, and we live in a predominantly Hispanic community. All of these bilingual social caseworker aides are going to be losing their position. Now, these are people that monitor visits during the time that we have parents in. They go out with emergency response workers on call. They interpret phone calls and do a variety of tasks. We're also losing our adoption paralegal, who is also bilingual, who's also Hispanic, and who basically provides services to finalize the adoption of kids on our caseload. which cannot be taken over by county council because those are billable hours. Okay. I had a lady tell me the other day that she's not able to live scan because she had to pay for fees to get her vehicle fixed. Now, can you imagine that same adoptive parent going out to get pay a paralegal or attorney in order to go ahead and finalize the adoption of her children? Okay. I think you really need to take a look at this. I noticed that the time is going real fast, but I didn't see any kind of time on Mr. Davis. You know, and I think that's an insult to us as employees. The agency did not ask for input from us as to what ways that we can reduce the budget and things of that nature. We already suffered a 2% pay decrease because of the budget. I think we probably would have been willing to suffer some more if we had to. The agency is also asking for an increase in people's salary. And I think this is kind of ridiculous in the time that we're talking about a $2 million shortfall. The agency is also asking to hire lead workers for each unit. You know, how many managers do you need? You have all the managers on top, below John Davis, and then you have unit managers, you have assistant directors, you have division managers, you have team leaders. Now you're going to hire lead workers for each unit. How can this be when you're talking about a budget shortfall? I can see I'm out of time. I have a lot to say, but I haven't been afforded that time. You know, I think the Board of Supervisors really need to look at what they're doing to the community, especially the Hispanic community, because these are all bilingual workers that are losing their positions, along with a lot of other positions. How many people in upper administration are losing their positions or asking to downgrade to another classification? Thank you for your time, and I hope this does something. I have an appointment over at administration tomorrow to tell me what my options are. That's how sure they think the Board of Supervisors is going to rubber stamp this action, item number 26. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak to this item? Mr. Davis, do you have anything else to say?
Actually, I think that when the individuals go to see how this plays out, it's less a reclass than it is elimination of jobs and then a bumping process that goes on. And I think people will be interested to see how that works. I think the caseworkers, and that would be my last comment, I think the caseworkers are really critical for us. We will have team leaders when we're done. We will have lead workers. We need to have somebody assisting the staff as they do their line work. But the social workers are absolutely critical to us, and that may have an impact on our caseworkers. In fact, it will. But statutorily and in terms of their education experience, we need them. And in that sense, I agree with the comments that are being made.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I do have one question. Is this thing working? Or? Yeah.
You're good.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, Mr. Davis, I just want to ask you one question. I know that the CAO's office has launched a campaign called Strengthening the Bottom Line, where they reached out to different employees and from every sector, basically, to get their input as to ways that expenses could be cut and the budget strengthened. Did you do any such effort within your agency that you'd like to comment on?
Yes, we were actually part of the whole project. It was a countywide project driven by the CAO's office. I did see one application, and I don't know where it came from. It came across my desk, and I wrote to the CAO and to the IT director. There are some technological things, I think, that came out of those discussions are absolutely fantastic in the sense that I think they will help us organize and help us streamline and make more efficient the whole operation. It'll be true in any of our departments that work in the field. So, and I do believe it might be in the DA's office where this started, I'm not sure, but you can use your telephones to actually map and do your trips and see where you are and where the next appointment and all the rest of that. And you can literally map it on top of your GIS system. The only reason I'm going on about it is I actually think that's revolutionary in terms of how we work. So yes, I did read those. We did incorporate some of those things. The smaller and the lower hanging fruit was easy to do. Some of this stuff is going to be countywide and is going to take policy change. So we do appreciate what came to us, and I do think in some ways we're going to see some very big change in how people do their work.
Any other questions?
I have a
Comments?
comment, Mr. Chairman. I feel the insult like our workers do. And the reason I feel this insult, there's probably 58 counties meeting today that are laying people off. And this is a symptom of all local government. If you add up the number of people the counties and the cities are having to lay off during this budget crisis, we far exceed what the state has done with their own employees. So when you start looking up the ladder, you may look up the ladder in your agency, but you need to look up the ladder in the state of California of how many state employees are taking the hit that the local government's taking, because they have not gone far enough on reducing the state overhead so that we may provide the services that are mandated by the state. So I do feel the insult that you feel, and I think every supervisor here feels the same way. We don't feel the state has gone far enough to protect us delivering services within the counties and the cities. But unfortunately, that's where we are at, and it's a matter of money. And if you don't have the money to provide the services, you can't provide the services. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a quick comment. I have tremendous empathy for the employees and their situations. The ultimate cutback is a layoff. I mean, cutting back people, percentages and so forth is difficult for everybody, but that doesn't sit well when someone loses their job, and we appreciate as much as we can that situation. But the fact of the matter is we are a pass-through agency when it comes to the funding. We provide the service, we do the work, but we don't generate the funds. The funds come to us from the state of California, and as was mentioned in the presentation earlier by Mr. Davis, we talk about categorical funds. So funds come to us from the state of California, they have to be put into certain categories. And part of the difficulty we have here and the fact that things went so quickly was when you have a budget that has been thought to be approved by the legislature, that's what our staff relies upon. When they think they've got a budget, they have an idea of what their money is going to be, they work out accordingly. And then at the 11th hour, the governor comes in with a blue pencil and says, oh no, you don't have this money. Yes, we thought we had it, but because it wasn't passed by the assembly, the money is no longer there. I'm getting rid of it. It's gone. That is what prompts quick action, because for every day that we continue to providing service and providing employment, now we have to put our general fund at risk, because we're not dealing with the state of California's money. We're dealing with what money that we have, and it's a declining sum as well. So I understand your frustrations. I understand your concerns. I don't believe demonizing the Health and Human Services Director is the answer to this, because I believe that they are doing everything they possibly can to work within the system that they have and the funding that they have. Anyway, I share Mr. Ashida's concerns that we are the whipping boys. You are the ultimate whipping boys, those who lose your jobs. But we are the messengers of the bad news, because we are passing along the funds that we get from the state of California. And that's where the cuts have come from. They've not come from the county of Tulare. They've come from the state of California.
Mr. Chair, I do have one comment I'd also like to make too. I think that the issue of time and proceeding rather quickly with this is very important as well, because as Mr. Davis had mentioned, $200,000 is going to be lost every second that we delay. That's why we have expertise in our staff. The way that we do is to come and present to us what they believe to be the best way to continue providing services to the customer base, and that is the constituency and the citizens of Tulare County. This $1.8 million was specifically cut from CWS funding. So I don't know how you can ask an entire agency to participate in specific that in the cuts that are taken specifically from one sector. I just don't think that that's, if the funding is not there, you cannot continue to provide the service. And so this is a very difficult thing. It's difficult to affect people's lives. However, this is not a decision. We didn't cut the $1.8 million from the CWS budget. The state of California did. So maybe that's who needs to be talked to as well. So that's what I have to say.
Well, let's make mine brief. When I had only the second press conference I've participated in the 4.5 years I've been here, I stated I'm angry that we have to be the ones that have to make these tough decisions. We're having our amounts of money that we're given by the state reduced. I am angry. This hurts. I see people shaking their head that they don't think this affects us. It does affect us. And if you don't think it affects us, I'm offended by that. So this is the difficult decisions we have to make, and I am angered by this. But these are decisions that we're asked to make because this is the position we've been put in. The state has imposed this decrease on us, and if you don't, I can't say anymore. I am angered by this, that we have to make these type of decisions. I'm hurt by this, especially by those who don't seem to think that this affects us at all. So with that, pardon me?
No.
No, I'm sorry. You had about 10 minutes of. Okay. With that,
Mr. Chairman,
entertain a motion.
I move that we approve item 25.
We've done
Staff
25.
recommendation.
26.
We amend
We did
25.
25 already.
We did 25.
Oh,
This is
excuse me,
26.
26.
Second.
Okay, Ashita, motion, and Worley, second. Okay, we are going to take up item 28. Supervisor Worthley is late for his family matter.
Good morning, Chairman Cox and Supervisors. I'm David Claxton, Chief Planner at RMA. This morning, I'm going to provide you with a brief...
David, may I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
I have to recuse myself.
Oh, that's right.
And I've asked for some clarification from CSAC to see if I can participate in these discussions on the Ordinance Act in the future.
Go ahead.
This morning, I'm going to present you with a brief update on the first Williamson Act program stakeholders meeting that took place on August 19th, review current options available with regard to the Williamson Act program, and seek staff direction with regard to those options. As you know, on July 28th, 2009, Governor Schwarzenegger blue-lined the Williamson Act subvention payments, leaving $1,000 in the kitty, if you will. This action potentially could cost the county $3.4 million of funding on an annual basis. That funding goes into the county's general fund. On August 8th of this year, Resource Management Agency provided the Board of Supervisors with an overview of alternatives identified at that time for the program and sought direction. The outcome of that meeting, we established a Williamson Act program stakeholders group. That group held its first meeting at RMA agency headquarters on August 19th, 2009. Stakeholder meeting was attended by 20 individuals. It included Supervisors Ennis and Supervisor Worthley, Resource Management Agency staff, the CAO's office, the assessor's office. John Gamper from the State Farm Bureau attended, as well as Tricia Stever from Tulare County Farm Bureau. Our Ag Commissioner was there, representatives from the Sheriff's Department, Cattlemen's Association, Citrus Mutual, the SEIU Union, our Ag Advisory Committee, and also there were a few individuals from the farming and ag community there. The primary issues discussed at that meeting included ongoing efforts throughout the state to encourage reinstatement of the subvention funding. John Gamper presented very compelling arguments with regard to the individual counties not going off on their own paths, but to try and keep a concerted focus on getting the governor to put the funds back in. And Mr. Gamper was expressing optimism that at some point during this next fiscal year, some or all of those funds may get put back into the pot. There were discussions regarding the importance of the Williamson Act in preserving not only ag lands but the local economies. Discussion was had with regard to the cost and effort needed to do the batch non-renewals that have been discussed as one of our options. There was a discussion with regard to the need to further identify those parcels that the county deems substandard and to focus on them. We had preliminarily identified approximately 2,000 parcels that could be deemed substandard under the Williamson Act, and if those properties were pulled out of the Williamson Act program through non-renewal, the county could see potentially added revenue of approximately $1.2 million in 10 years. We had a discussion with regard to the challenges associated with the proposed assessment district option. Those had to do with the cost associated with it, the difficulty in establishing some sort of a gross assessment production number that would actually work, and a number of other things. We then got into a discussion of another alternative called a participation agreement option, and I'll go through that with you very briefly. The participation agreement option, as envisioned at this point, would essentially be like a development agreement. It would be optional to each of the contract holders, and this agreement would be entered into as an alternative for those individual contract holders as an option to non-renewal, so that if we do a batch non-renewal, and along with sending out those non-renewals, we provide them with the option of entering into this participation agreement, then we would not, and they agree to that, we would then not non-renew them. We would cancel the non-renewal. The existing preserves and contracts could be saved. This program would reimburse the county for lost subvention. We could potentially include an inflationary clause, which would be very helpful. And preliminary analysis would be that this rate that the property owners would pay would be less than what they would pay at full market assessment because of the savings having to do with school taxes. Okay, at this point, there are several options on the table, and we are seeking direction for staff. One of them is a moratorium on new agricultural preserves. I would like to indicate that the deadline for the filing of ag preserves is August 31st, 2009. We currently have several applications which we are holding. In order for us to process those, we have to come back before this board twice this year. Once would be before October 31st to actually establish the preserves, and then by December 31st to actually establish the individual contracts. The next would be for us to continue to identify and process county-initiated non-renewals on substandard Williamson Act parcels. The other would be to proceed with county-initiated batch non-renewals on all Williamson Act contracts. Another alternative previously discussed, of course, is the assessment district, which has challenges that have been identified at this point, and then any other options that the board deems appropriate, including the participation agreement as briefly discussed herein. So, with that, that concludes staff report on our various options on the meeting, and we seek direction.
Hey, David, very difficult item. You know, you had to move through this rather quickly, but I know this is a discussion we wanted to have in public. I do have one request here from Craig Knutson to talk to this item. So, Craig, if you'd like to come up now, and then we'll Thank you, Michelle.
Craig Knutson, 50560 Hogback Road, Badger, California. And first off, David was paying attention at that meeting. He did a great job. We had a lot of give and take. We thank the board for the opportunity to be involved in this meeting that's very important to agriculture. And we understand, agriculture understands, with the governor's recent decision to blue line the Williamson Act, that's going to put a hole in the county's budget in future years. But we also believe that those subvention funds will be reinstituted shortly. As we heard from John Gamper, who is the California Farm Bureau Representative of Taxation and Land Use. And I've provided a copy of these remarks to you, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. But I'd also like to point out that, when we talk about savings in Williamson Act property taxes, yes, there's a savings to that grower. But as we heard today on the addendum to the Board of Supervisors from the Auditor Controller, we still pay that dollar per hundred on all those improvements on our farms and ranches. Tractors, trees, irrigation systems, livestock facilities, you name it, fencing, etc. And we continue to pay those. And our tax bill, even though we're within the Williamson Act, can be pretty substantial. And we'd just like to caution the county that it take a go-slow approach to this issue, and let's not see if we can't work this out with the state, which we think will happen, and not get too far ahead of this. Very important first meeting. Appreciated the opportunity to have that discussion. A lot of good feedback from the county, RMA. Currently, we're within our organization, Tulare County Farm Bureau, Land Use, are starting to look at this issue also. And like I say, would like to continue to be involved in these meetings as they progress. Understand there's some deadlines involved. Hopefully we'll hear back about the subvention funds prior to those deadlines arriving. But let's keep these meetings going, and I think they're going to be worth it in the long run. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. I know it's the intention to keep these meetings ongoing, to look for input and support from the farming community. Any comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment. I was there with Mr. Ennis, and it was a very lively discussion. It was very informative. I learned a lot from Mr. Gamper. He knows Williamson Act. I think he must have been there from the very beginning, and has obviously been a major champion of the Williamson Act itself. One of the things I did learn was that the 10% reduction that the county suffered in last year's budget was not a temporary cut, but in fact was done in such a way as to be a permanent 10% reduction, which raises the next question, was because the original budget that we had scheduled was scheduled with the state that this year was another 20% reduction. And the question comes to my mind, and was that a 20% permanent reduction, or was that just a temporary reduction? Because obviously the writing on the wall is that if it doesn't go away immediately, it may be in the process of being phased out. Also learned about how the amount we received based upon a dollar figure in 1999, apparently through the process of the ERAF, where monies were redistributed in property tax. One of the bones sort of thrown to the county was an increase in the subvention, so that it went from, I think, about $1.8 to $3.4 million, which was helpful, obviously, to the county. But it's been there since 1999, and there is no provision for increasing it. So it's in 10 years, when I look back at cost of living and so forth, if a 3% inflation factor is applied, in 10 years we've lost 30% of the purchasing power of that subvention that we had in 1999. All this raises major issues for us. I will tell you that there was a quite well-attended phone conference with the CSAC Ag and Resource Committee, and a lot of things came out of that. Again, as was recommended by the farming community, the recommendation to the general directory of the CSAC is to push very, very hard to try to reestablish the subvention. and get it back in there. Again, it was put in the budget. It was blue lined by the governor. But I would caution that, you know, in the last years that the governor's been in this office, there has been an effort on his part, from his department, from his office, to try to get rid of the subvention. He sent his Secretary of Agriculture down to tell counties, be prepared, this subvention is going to go away. And it's been a struggle every year to try to keep it in. I learned a lot. I think we all learned a lot. I think there's a lot more to be done. We have on the 31st of August a meeting that's been spearheaded by Fresno County at the Fresno Farm Bureau. I will be attending, and our staff will be attending, to find out what other counties are doing. Apparently they've done something different in Merced. We're not quite sure what it was, but we wanted to study it and try to find out what that was and whether it has applicability to Tulare County. I think I left the meeting with this report, statement. All well and good. Hopefully we can restore this. But the question is, what if? What if we don't restore it? What if the long-term situation is that it's going to go away? What is going to be our strategy? And so I think we would like to send a message to the state of California and to the governor's office that the county cannot sustain this kind of long-term impact from the property taxes. And so if you're going to stop subventing dollars, the county will have to take some sort of action to deal with that lack of subvention. Be that as it is, my thought about this is that this matter is not mature enough to make any kind of decision today about what we're going to do. We need to have, again, there's going to be this meeting in Fresno. We need to have further communication with our stakeholders group. I think we need to keep all options on the table. But I do think there are some things that we might want to say that we're fairly certain about today, going forward, and I would think that would be a moratorium on new contracts going forward, so that we don't add to the problem in the future. Secondarily, I think there seemed to be some support at the stakeholder meeting to look at the non-conforming parcels and look at what kind of action might be taken on those to start a notice of non-renewal on those parcels. Or whatever action we need to be taking. I don't know whether there could be findings could be made to show that the contract's breached. We might be able to null and void the contract or whatever action we need to take. But I think that those are a couple things that we know we need to start. I think it's unrealistic to think the county would be able to do the notice of non-renewal on all parcels this year, given the short time frame that we have and the amount of work that would be involved, because the notice is not a big deal, but when it comes to actually going through the paperwork of individual contracts on the thousands of parcels that we have, it's not likely that we could do that if we wanted to do that. And again, the county does not want to do that, but we have to be looking at some sort of long-term strategy. So that's my report. My recommendation back to the board would be that we would probably direct staff to keep all of our options open, but certainly move ahead with moratorium on new contracts and looking at our non-conforming parcels and beginning a process with them.
Chair, I have a comment as well. I was not able to be privy to these meetings for Brown Act purposes. However, in listening to this report and also several discussions I've had with various constituents and things, I too agree that we should not proceed with any new agricultural easements or Williamson Act contracts. I do agree with that, and I also agree with the avenue of moving forward with a non-renewal for non-conforming parcels or substandard parcels. However, I do think that in that vein, if we do the non-renewals of substandard parcels, if we do it based on size, I think that would be the first-hand or general thought to proceed, but I think we need to include some sort of an appeal process for the landowners.
Let me respond to that, if I might, Mr. Vanderpool. The issue did come up. What I've stated basically is a generic statement. We recognize that there are other criteria which need to be attached to that. Yeah. For instance, one gentleman who was there pointed out that his father a number of years ago had divided up his 45 acres into 5-acre parcels when it was legal to do that. But he farms it as a 45-acre parcel. So there are issues in terms of how parcels are conjoined from farming practices and so forth. And so it would take further. It's not, in fact, this is part of the problem. This is not a simple process, even looking at what is a non-standard or what is a non-conforming parcel, because we have a lot of other issues out there that have to be addressed. But again, we need to be looking at these. From my perspective, this is something we need to do, because even if the subvention were to come back, we need to be looking at substandard parcels. And we've talked about that even before, that if the subvention came back, we still need to look at substandard parcels, because there's no reason why they should be in the Williamson Act to begin with. So that was, I think that's the reason why I was recommending that. But there are a lot of criteria that will have to be attached to it. I mean, and you may have people who have 5 acres and they are making a living on it, growing vegetable crops, strawberries, something of that nature, and there may be some exception for, like you said, it may require an appeal process. I think the general principle is, if people are making a living from farming, we would like to try to keep them in the Williamson Act contract. If they simply do as I do, live on 4 acres out in the country, and I'm not a farmer, I should not have the benefit, nor do I, by the way, of having a Williamson Act contract to reduce my property tax. So I think where there's probably general agreement on the principles. Of course, how you get there is another matter, and that has to be worked out. That's part of what the staff would be pursuing in terms of the recommendation from the board.
Yeah, and I was just making that comment just as staff goes forward, to be mindful of that potential as well. But however, I do agree with going forward as you had mentioned as well.
So it sounds like we're all on the same page with the 2 recommendations: moratorium on no new contracts, and then to assign a team to work on the county-initiated non-renewal of substandard Williamson Act parcels. And I imagine this is going to be a team process where we'll come back, I would think, maybe to the board with this criteria that's been discussed, and again, working with the Farm Bureau to help maybe come up with this criteria.
The third thing, though, Mr. Chairman, is I do think we want staff to continue looking at all options. I mean, we do have to look at long-term implications, and we need to be working toward that in that regard. And of course, that's part of what our association with CSAC and our brother and sister counties and so forth, trying to find a resolution in the future. But those are the 2 things I think that sort of stick out right now as a thing we need to move forward on.
I'll agree with everything that both of my fellow supervisors have said. I know we also have language in our some of our newer contracts that allow us to cancel them automatically if the subvention is terminated, and I would encourage our staff to look at those newer contracts that have that newer language in it as well. That having been said, do you have clear enough direction, Mr. Claxton?
Yes.
I'm not looking at. Oh. Did you want to say something, Jane? Okay. Is this? I think that was just for direction. We do have this listed as an action item, and Supervisor Worthley just left. Entertain a motion?
I motion that we approve the direction that we have given staff as stated earlier.
Moved by Vanderpool, second by Worthley. It's unanimous 3 with Supervisor Ashita having recused himself, Supervisor Ennis being excused to Sacramento. Okay, we now have item number 27. And I'm going to ask County Council, since we're down to 2 supervisors, are we spinning our wheels and they're going to have to come back here next week anyways?
No, it's assuming Supervisor Ashita comes back. There he is.
There he is.
You have no more 4/5 votes on your agenda today.
Okay.
I missed?
You were sorely missed.
Good morning, Supervisors. Nina Dong, Deputy County Counsel. I'm here to present item number 27. It's a request from County Council to waive the second reading and adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 3 of Part 6 of the Ordinance Code pertaining to investigation, license, and permit requirements and enforcement provisions applicable to the adult-oriented businesses and performers. The amendments have procedural and regulatory purposes, including health, safety, and welfare of the public. The license collector designated as auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, first management agency, and the sheriff's office are here today to speak further to the purposes. The amendments provide, in general, one, that the license collector may require additional information for the application, including sheriff's office investigation requirements for fingerprints or pictures. Number two, the applicant must wait 1 year after a business license application has been denied to file a new application. Number three, the general and sheriff's business license application investigation requirements of the ordinance code will apply. Number four, I don't. Number four, the amendments provide renumbering and separation of the general license requirements and also license requirements that apply to adult-oriented businesses providing live entertainment. Number five, business owners will not allow a person to provide adult-oriented entertainment pursuant to this Chapter 3 unless the person has a performer's permit and the permit is displayed. Further, the business owner will provide copies of all licenses and permits upon request of a law enforcement officer. The amendments also provide increased and clarified security requirements. As proposed in the agenda item, the language to change is 1 security guard inside for each increment of 35% occupancy capacity, and 2 security guards on duty outside the premises, patrolling the grounds and the parking areas. An alternative language is to have 1 security guard inside for each increment of 35% occupancy capacity, and 1 security guard on duty outside of the premises for every 2 contiguous sides of the premises, every standalone side of the premises, or every separate grounds, patrolling the grounds and the parking areas. Amendments further provide that if a licensee fails to comply with any of the conditions of application approval after the license or permit is issued, the county may seek remedies allowed by law in addition to revocation of the license. Further, the application for a performer's permit renewal must be filed 45 days instead of 10 days before the expiration of the permit. The amendments also provide additions to the violations section. As proposed in the agenda item, failure to comply with any condition of approval of the license is a misdemeanor. An alternative is to make it so failure to comply with any condition of approval is an infraction for the first 2 citations in a 12-month period, and a misdemeanor for the 3rd or more citations within the same 12-month period. Another option is to add a hardship waiver of license requirement. This was not proposed in the original agenda item, but we are proposing it today. If 1 or more of the license requirements is physically impossible, the applicant may apply in writing for a hardship waiver of the license requirements to the license collector. There will be a hearing before the license collector within 10 days of request, and the hardship waiver could be granted if the license collector finds there's extreme hardship to the applicant due to certain physically unattainable license requirements, and the waiver will not have a negative effect on the public health, safety, or welfare. The license collector would be able to require an agreement to the new condition or to a new condition to alleviate any negative effects on the health, safety, or welfare of the county due to the waiver. And an appeal would be allowed to the Board of Supervisors. Another option not presented in the original agenda item is to add clarification that Chapter 1 regarding the general licensing and regulation requirements of the same Part 6 applies to the adult-oriented businesses chapter. So the alternatives before the board are to decline to consider the ordinance amendment, or postpone this action to a later date, or decide on any combination of the options that were presented before you. If you select any of the options that were not in the original agenda item set forth here under B to E, then we would recommend to continue waiver of the second reading and adoption of the ordinance. Thank you. I'm available for questions.
You know, we do have pending litigation in regard to this. I'd like to go to closed session, ask counsel, as we look at these options, how those affect our pending litigation. So we will adjourn to closed session and return shortly.
Item A on your board's closed session agenda.
Okay, we're back in open session, and we'll bring it back to the board for further discussion and/or action.
Well, I would move that we table this or put it off for, I think, what do we say?
We want to continue it for 1 week.
Continue for a couple of weeks to work out a couple of details.
1 week.
Or 1 week, I'm sorry. 1 week to September 1st, and that way a couple of details can be worked out.
Well, we would seek direction from your board in open session as to which of these alternatives you wish us to adopt.
I think the alternatives were, as far as the misdemeanor was concerned, to go to 2 infractions and a misdemeanor on the citations, and then on the security guards to mirror other language that already exists in other county ordinances, which was an option that you provided, not the first one, but the option. And then to allow the hardship waiver language to be included in the ordinance. Am I correct, Supervisor Ishida?
Correct.
So there's your direction.
A motion to continue.
Second.
Cast your votes. Okay, 3 in favor, Supervisor Worthley and Ennis being absent. And we that concludes our calendar. We will now, Council, we have further need for closed session.
Mr. Chairman, you've already addressed item A. You have items B through L on your board's closed session agenda and addendum. Item F is off agenda. I do not anticipate any announcements